Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, namaskar. I stand before you here today after what has been a difficult week for us. India suffered a terrorist attack in Kashmir's Pahalgam. 26 tourists were killed by Pakistani terrorists. As an Indian citizen, as a journalist, and as a human being, one has felt grief and anger. Old wounds have been opened, old challenges stare us in the face. At a time like this, speaking about collaboration in South Asia can be tough. And I was wondering what I was going to say as I got on the flight yesterday. I also realized that we've been here before. So I'll start by repeating what I said on my show in the aftermath of the attack, that to call it a cycle of terrorism and denial implies a sense of inevitability. But what's happening here is not inevitable. Together we can break this pattern by setting the record straight. And it's imperative that we do now more than ever, also because where we come from. I think in most parts of the world, journalism is a relatively straightforward affair. You tell your audience what has happened. A court case, a cricket match, a new piece of legislation, a corruption scandal. You tell the story. It's not so simple for us. Here we can't just be happy telling the story, because what we say is the world's window into South Asia, into our society, our culture, our politics, our aspirations. And that adds a whole different dimension, a whole new level of pressure and responsibility to our jobs as journalists, because this is not just about reporting, it is also about shaping the world's opinion of us. If we leave it to Western media, they will turn South Asia into entertainment fodder, with a lot of crass stereotypes and little understanding or sensitivity as to who we are as a people. The usual stories about poverty, political chaos, weddings on elephants, and overly dramatic movies. But we know that South Asia is a lot more than that. We are a region of 2.2 billion people with dozens of languages, dozens of cultural intricacies, and many, many aspirations. If we are to take our rightful place in the world, we must take charge of our stories. We must tell our stories. We need to create a narrative that is fit for our society. And I often think we have global forums, we have regional forums, we have groupings, we have alliances on a whole lot of issues: trade, connectivity, security, climate action. Why not media? As leaders of the region meet, I would urge them to consider media as a potential area of collaboration. Because when we present the right picture before the world, we create the right perception, and it matters very much. When a business is looking to diversify into your country, an investor who's looking to put money in your country, a student who's looking to study in your country, a professional who's looking to relocate and work in your country, will base their decision on their perception of who we are and what we have to offer. So it makes political, economic, and strategic sense to take charge of our stories, to tell our stories ourselves. We know we cannot do it alone. So we must collaborate and engage with each other. There are many ways to do it. There are also many, many challenges. I hope to lay out both today. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face is politics and polarization, both of which are rampant in our part of the world. Unfortunately, it's also filtering into newsrooms and media reportage, and that can be a dangerous thing. Our default setting is to think as Indian journalists, Sri Lankan journalists, Bangladeshi journalists, Pakistani journalists, but not South Asian journalists. And if you're only covering domestic issues, that should not be a problem. But when we cover issues which have a regional dimension, which have regional relevance, then it's important to have a regional lens. If not, our stories can be skewed at best and contradictory at worst. And I'm not saying that as journalists we should be disconnected or de-link ourselves from national interest. We should not. I think we should be thinking on two tracks. A, what is good for my country, and B, how can I make it good for the region? And this is the approach that we need to adopt, to use a regional lens to tell stories from South Asia. Why don't we do it? Well, there are many reasons, but I think the biggest one is politics. Today, if the governments of India and Sri Lanka decide to undermine each other, it will be very hard for journalists on either side to collaborate. So political fractures in South Asia have hampered media collaboration. And I'm not just talking about news media. You can look at music, you can look at movies. We consume content created and produced in each other's countries, but in terms of engagement, we have very little. And even when we do, it is at the mercy of political ties. So that is one challenge. The second challenge is misinformation, which is an industry in itself. I was just reading some numbers. South Asia's internet connectivity has doubled in the last decade. Doubled. Our region leads all others when it comes to the number of online users. So we are a big market. Unfortunately, that also means that misinformation spreads very fast in South Asia on social media platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, X. And this poses a twin challenge. One, because these companies are all based in the US. There is very little you can do. They will only answer to the American government. You cannot have Mark Zuckerberg deposed before your parliamentary committee. You can try. The other challenge is that these platforms are increasingly doing away with fact-checking. So going forward, misinformation will spread faster on a bigger scale. And I think it would be unfair to just blame social media, because traditional media, mainstream media, has also been guilty of this. We've been caught carrying misinformation about other countries. And this is a reality that we need to address and accept. Why can't an editor sitting in Dhaka call up an editor in Kathmandu to verify a piece of information? I can speak from personal experience. I'm sure my colleagues from India would agree. Some of us have visited Sri Lanka multiple times over the last few years. I've covered arguably every big story that has happened in the past few years in this country. And it's not been easy. Even though we track developments here very closely, I'm sure you'd agree that ground reporting is a different ballgame altogether. And you cannot match the expertise, the reach, and the understanding of a local reporter. There have been multiple times when I've felt the need to share notes with someone who has a better grasp of the situation. Thankfully, over the years, I've also made friends here, and a lot of you have been kind enough to share with me what you know. But we don't have a framework. It would have helped the first time I came here. It would help those who come in the months and years ahead. So this is the sort of cooperation and engagement we must strive for. The third challenge is the lack of adequate funding, and the pandemic, I would say, has exacerbated it. There's been cost cutting across the board, waves of layoffs, and that is a classic sign of distress. Good content needs good investment. It is relatively easy and cheaper for an influencer to create a makeup video or tutorial or a dress-up reel. But if you want to create in-depth news stories which are engaging, with original content, you need investment, you need technological investment, you need manpower investment. This lack of funding also has a direct impact on the scope of collaboration in South Asia, because then, as newsroom leaders, we have a choice to make. With your limited resources, where do you deploy it? Do you deploy it in covering stories in your country, or do you deploy it in collaborative programs? And that's a tough and unfair choice to make. I know a lot of people are exploring the subscription model for news. I think it's a noble idea. I've always said that if you want news platforms to work for you, you have to pay for it. Otherwise, those platforms are working for advertisers or vested political interests. I think on paper this is a solid argument, but I'm afraid in practice it has not taken us very far. Also because this is South Asia, it's a price-sensitive market for anything, let alone news, or especially news. In the digital age, I think consumers believe that news is a public good and it should be free. So what do? We can either spend time and effort in trying to convince people that good news content cannot be free, or we can challenge social media and tech platforms and tell them to not make money off our content. Ideally, we should be doing both. There are countries that have done it, countries like Canada and Australia, where media companies have challenged tech giants. But here we are not even talking about it. And look at our numbers. We are a very big market. We have lots of platforms. If we decide to join ranks and speak in one voice, we can push the needle. Our voice could be heard. A fourth challenge, according to me, is censorship. Some countries are dealing with tighter government regulation. In other cases, the media itself is self-censoring. When regimes change, when there is more religious polarization, when economies crash, when geopolitical equations change, the media tends to cash in on the trend. It does compromise our credibility, this sort of reactive journalism. But I think we'll all agree that the bigger challenge is government pressure and censorship. How do you fight it? By arming yourselves with the power of numbers. When you have a loyal and growing audience, when you have solid financial records, when you have allies across the border, then you become a force to reckon with. And that is what we should aim for, to come together and collaborate as partners, not rivals. The fifth challenge, I think, is technology. Because news media is not just about the content we create, it is also about how we disseminate it, how do we take it to the audience. In South Asia, most consumers use their phone, use social media to consume content, and most of us have been late to the trend. Now we are catching up. But here's the thing about technology. With technology, catching up is a myth, because by the time you think you've caught up, the next one is already on the horizon. In this case, it's artificial intelligence. It is here. It is changing the way we create news. It is already taking jobs. It is transforming the news landscape. So what do? First of all, we must protect our content. We must make sure that our content is not being used by these tech companies to train their AI bots. There are media houses in the West that have sued AI giants. But again, we are not even having this conversation. We don't even know if and what part of our content is being used to train AI bots. The second thing we need to do is to be open-minded, be clear-eyed about the challenges, about the ethical dilemmas that AI poses, but also it makes no sense to live in denial because this technology is coming, whether we like it or not. So we might as well embrace it and try to ace it. It is a disruption. But AI could also be the X factor that helps us scale. So it's important to keep an open mind. I think these are the 5 main challenges to news media collaboration in South Asia: politics and polarization, misinformation, lack of funds, censorship, and technological disruption. It is important to address all of these because our region has immense potential, possibly more than any other. What we need is cohesion. And I leave the policy bits to governments. They will take their time. I've learned over time to moderate my expectations. But let's focus on what we can do as journalists. We can help South Asians understand each other better. We can reduce the trust deficit. And it should not be that hard because historically, this has been a well-connected region. We have a centuries-long history of engagement and cultural interaction. Our music sounds similar. Our food uses the same ingredients. Our religions are shared. Our languages are shared. Our region is ripe for closer collaboration. And this is where the media comes in. We cannot let rhetoric or misplaced nationalism dictate our opinion of each other. We should strive to focus on shared priorities, build a sense of trust and respect. If people like each other, that is half the battle won. So I guess the obvious question is, how do we do it? I think it's important to start with the low-hanging fruits, to focus on stories and issues that are of common interest and concern. Climate change is one. Unsustainable debt, poverty alleviation, they largely do not have a political dimension or a strategic point of conflict. So these are the issues we can focus on. We can learn from each other. Maybe the Maldives has some plans, has some policy solutions on how to deal with rising sea levels that Sri Lanka could learn from. Maybe Bhutan has figured out sustainable tourism that Nepal could learn from. Unless we share these stories, we will never know. Secondly, we need more engagement on news content. There used to be a time when most Indian news platforms had correspondents in most of the capitals in the region. But that era is behind us. If we cannot have correspondence, if we cannot exchange correspondence, we should exchange ideas, we should interact, join training programs, join production, even a Zoom call. I would say any conversation is better than none. And finally, we should explore non-news collaboration. I just mentioned rallying for internet companies to pay up. That is one area where we can work together. The other area is to focus on the safety of journalists and workplace rights. And here I want to mention Afghanistan. This is a country where our women colleagues have been systematically erased from the media landscape. What is stopping us from speaking up for them? And there have been instances of such collaboration, but not enough. We saw this in the Pandora Papers investigation, when news outlets from South Asia joined hands to expose the rich and powerful. We've also seen joint broadcasts by TV channels, including between India and Pakistan. And these get eyeballs, they have a shock value. But they're not scalable, they're not sustainable. You don't do that over a period of time. And I'm not saying that we should not aim for these high visibility projects. I'm saying let's focus on the low-hanging fruit first. And governments, of course, can play a role in making it easier. If they give impetus to South Asian unity, media outlets can take a cue and run with it. Governments can invite journalists from the region for major political events. make travel and visa rules easier. All of this will help, but the main thrust and push has to come from us. And I think that is why initiatives like this one are so very important. Let me congratulate the Sri Lanka India Media Friendship Association for hosting this event, for bringing us all together, so many colleagues from the region in one room. It's a fantastic opportunity to exchange ideas, to work towards new goals, and just a chance to catch up. I can only hope that other countries will take a cue from this and build on it, because we need to have these conversations now. It's a very dangerous and uncharted media territory out there. There are players with deeper pockets, and in many cases also with sinister agendas, if I may add. And in times like these, we need to have each other's back. We have the talent, we have the stories, we have the audience. All we need is to stop working in silos and build something together. Because I repeat, if we don't tell our stories, someone else will. And chances are, they will get it wrong again. Thank you.
We'd like to open the floor for a couple of questions. So if you have any, we can accommodate like around 2 or 3 questions. Yes, we have someone from that end. Can we pass the mic, please?
Hello, Ms. Sharma. Thank you very much for your opening remarks and for your speech. Thank you very much for coming to Sri Lanka. I have a very simple 3-part question to you, so let me be precise. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, now.
Thank you. My question is very simple. It's a 3-part question, and let me be very specific as possible. What does nationalism mean to you? And you spoke about the regional perspective and coming together. So I would like to know what nationalism means to you. Can it be reconciled with a regional perspective and collaboration, because you start from a nationalism point of view and then you try to come together as a region? And lastly, do you consider yourself a nationalist? And if yes or no, what is your personal approach and attitude towards it? That's my simple question.
I'll start with the last one. I am very much a nationalist. To me, as a journalist, nationalism means celebrating the wins, focusing on the challenges, having frank conversations. I know that there are many definitions and many, many ways to understand, but this is how I think this is what nationalism means to me, that you have to focus on what is right. You also have to understand that we don't use our platforms and our voice and our influence to get caught into someone else's game. And that is very much a reality of our times. I said that there are players with sinister agendas, there are people who are looking to distort narratives for whatever reasons. It is important to understand that. I am very much a nationalist, but when I'm on a global platform, I don't seek certificates of neutrality from others. How do we reconcile nationalism with regional interest? Like I said, there are a lot of areas with shared interest, common concern that we can work together. It is not possible in the case of, I started with India and Pakistan. How do you work with the Pakistani media in this environment? You cannot. In an ideal world, as neighbors, we coexist peacefully, but this is not an ideal world. So we build on whatever common ground we have, and we take it from there. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And Any more questions? We have one here. Can we pass the mic, please?
Palki, thank you very much, and so nice to hear your points, very logical. Same thing in a different way, what the other gentleman asked. See, perceptions are so important, and your role as a journalist and all the people here as a journalist, so important. What has happened in America in terms of tariff, the changes, it is disturbing entire world. So I fully believe that journalism and perception creation is very, very important. In this type of situation, how can we expedite this perception building towards the right direction? Would you like to share your views?
Invest in media. We invest in, it can be a slightly controversial take. We have to look at media as a strategic asset, right? And countries have big budgets for defense, 2% of GDP, 4% of GDP. But we don't look at media in the same way, at least in this part of the world. In the West, they have. The BBC was set up to send a certain message about the British Raj to their colonies. These are powerful, well-funded platforms, and they're doing the job that they were set up for. I'm not taking away from the work that many journalists do there, but I can also see the larger purpose that some of these platforms serve. So we have to invest in our media. I said it in the past that when the New York Times writes something about some of our leaders, it becomes a matter of parliamentary debate. But when our newspapers write something, nobody bothers. We don't have that edge. We need to build it to be able to put our point across.
I think we have one more question from that end. Yes.
Hi, Palki.
Hi.
Huge fan. Thank you for being the Christian Amanpour of our time. It's amazing. And just one question. What are your thoughts on music journalism from Asia?
Music journalism. I've never dwelled on it enough. Maybe I should. I think we have a rich repository. We should be able to do more. I don't think we do enough. So if you're one of the journalists who's focusing on music, kudos to you, and may your tribe grow.
Shukriya.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Ms. Palki Sharma for that very insightful and informative keynote address. And I'd like to remain on stage because we want to present a token of appreciation. So to do the honors, I'd like to invite the chairperson of SLIMFA, Mr. Nista Qasim, and the festival director, Mr. Santosh Menon, to please do the honors. Please to the center.